Deep in the heart of Ohio's Amish country, away from the bustling eyes of the world, the Amish renegade was born. Escaping the confines of tradition, Lizzie Ens pursued her passion to become a highly sought-after health and wellness coach, driven by a deep desire to heal and inspire. With a unique ability to awaken the inner commando and renegade within each individual, Lizzie stands as a beacon of hope in a world yearning for change and craving simplicity. Tune in to the only show of its kind, hosted by the Amish renegade herself, Lizzie Ens, on The Lizzie Ens Show.
Welcome, everyone, for another amazing and powerful episode here. I'm very, very excited to bring an amazing and special guest to you guys today, my dear friend Maureen Weigl. Am I saying your last name right? Is it Weigl?
Weigl.
Weigl. I'm so sorry, Weigl. We are going to dive into so much today, but I'm really, really excited for you to share your story and also your expertise, because you have such a wealth of knowledge. And just a few times that we've had conversations, I'm always inspired by what you have to share. So Maureen, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. It's so nice to meet you finally in virtually. I had a great career. So I was very fortunate. I joined the military while I was in college in ROTC at the University of Pittsburgh. Never thought I would be a career military woman. But I joined just to see what ROTC and the military was like. And I just loved it. And they dangled a carrot and said, "You want to jump out of airplanes?" And I was like, "Of course." So I had to sign a contract. And, when I was ready to graduate from college, I was commissioned as a lieutenant in the Army. And I thought I'd go on a 3-year tour and leave the military and just use the experience for fun. And I really just loved every moment of it. And every time I thought it was time to transition out, I was offered more fun opportunities. So I served for 25 years. I was regular Army with the 10th Mountain Division, went to Haiti in 1994, stayed in, and then I was in the New York Army National Guard and then moved to the Pennsylvania Guard to teach ROTC at Penn State. And then I came to the headquarters here in Pennsylvania and then finished up down at National Guard Bureau, making policies for the Army National Guard. So I was a personnelist and didn't have a lot of opportunities back then to be a lot of cool things. Women were a little limited, but I loved everything I've done. So I served for 25 years and I retired in 2016. And at the time, I did not think I wanted to go work for a corporation because, like most military, we have a passion and a purpose bigger than ourselves. So I wanted to figure out what my next passion and purpose would be. So I started looking at amputee clothing for veterans that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan with prosthetic devices, adjusting to their new normal. And I met spouses that told me that always triggered negative emotion. So I was working with clothing manufacturers, and as luck would have it, a few different contractors called me and asked if I'd work for them. So I decided to start my own woman-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. Was doing really well and having a lot of fun. I still have my small business with my partner, Scott Long, and we're doing really well. But then I was asked, like, the job of a lifetime, if I'd come back here in Pennsylvania and run the Veteran Affairs Office for Major General Mark Schindler, the Adjutant General. So I get to take care of 700,000 veterans and their families across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I run 6 nursing homes that are fabulous facilities for our veterans. And every day it's a lot of fun. So I, served for 25 years. I continue to serve, and it doesn't feel like work.
Wow. That's just absolutely incredible. And I have a special place in my heart for nursing homes. I worked in a nursing home for 6 years. So I know what it's like on the inside, and I definitely never have. Now, these nursing homes are specifically for the vets, right?
Veterans and spouses, yes.
Veterans and spouses. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just phenomenal. So as you were like sharing this, I'm going, what was it like as a woman to be in the military? I want to hear about it.
I didn't really think of it any different. I grew up in between 3 brothers. I was kind of a tomboy growing up. My sisters were older. So I played sports when sports wasn't popular for women, when it was just starting to have women's teams for, college. Well, college had it, but they're just growing in the demand for women in sports. So I was always used to competing with men and boys and playing rough. So,
Mm.
I just loved the competitiveness and the pattern and the structure of the military. And I was in units with men and women. So I wasn't serving by myself most of my career. I did have experiences when I was the only woman, and those are challenges you have to overcome, mostly logistics. And you kind of lose a little sense of modesty when you're on an airplane with 200 folks going to Haiti and there's no bathrooms and showers and running water. And you're a personnelist, but now you're an infantryman and you're learning how to live in Haiti with like absolutely nothing. And those are the logistically hard things, but I never had a bad experience. I found that most of my mentors were peers, my peers were men, most of my mentors were men, peers were men. And I just related with them. But there were women who had sad stories. And I've watched over my 30-year career how much things have changed for women. We were limited in what you were allowed to do when I joined in 91. 1994, President Clinton opened up the risk rule so women can be fighter pilots and serve in positions that were mainly combat, but you weren't allowed to be in direct combat roles. And then in 2013, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta wholly lifted the ban on women. So today we have 4 female 4-star admirals and generals, Chief of the Navy. We have a Southern Command, a COCOM combatant commander, 4-star general, and women are infantry and Rangers and Navy SEALs, and everything is open. So the women that paved the way for me to serve, and were trailblazers, and we all had to deal with vulgarity and harassment and dealing with men and kind of locker room talk, as you would call it. But for the most part, for me, it was fun, and it didn't bother me. For some people, it did, and I wasn't harassed terribly. But I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you grew up with a brother, so you were like used to being around it as well. So I feel like that kind of helped you too, because you knew how to kind of navigate those situations too. That's what I'm feeling. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm curious, what are some of, not just both men and women, what would you say are some of the main challenges that the vets like experience while they're on duty? And then I want to also talk about after, because vets for sets is something that I want to dive into
Yes.
as well. Because I really want to highlight that too. But I'm just curious, like what you've seen and what it was like when you were there, and also are there new challenges that they face now?
I think a common challenge for anyone that wants to serve, and the word is service for a reason. It's not easy, right? You're at the will of the military. What jobs they let you serve in are really at the needs of the military service. Where you get stationed and where you're positioned, whether or not your family can accompany you or not, is at the needs of the military. It's not easy to leave your family. It's not easy to miss birthdays and holidays and be stationed over, all parts of the world. Missing those opportunities to spend time with your kids, whether you're a mom or a dad. It's challenging. It's not unique to one gender. I think we've had gender biases where people would look at the women like, how do you want to leave your kids? Aren't you who's going to stay home and watch your kids? And when you say, well, that my husband's home. Today, that's, normal. And men and women both have to. I think that work-life balance is really challenging for military service. That's why many people serve their 4 years or their 6 years and then they leave service, because they want that time with their family. They want to have a life, and they want to be able to, or become a parent and not be gone and have that lifestyle. So I think for everybody, that's the issue. I think for today, I think today's challenges would be the polarization of politics, and understanding that military service is at the needs of whoever the president is and the government. And our job is not to ask why all the time, but to, serve where they tell you to. And I think this generation and all kids today, ask more questions like, well, why would we do this? It's not, we shouldn't be doing this. And I don't want to do this. And I think that's a struggle that service members have. And that's probably why our recruiting and retention rates are lower. But serving, you put the needs of the country, whatever those needs are, whether you agree with them or not, first. And you've took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and follow orders. And it's not always easy to follow orders if you disagree with them, even if they're unlawful or lawful.
Yeah.
unlawful, you don't follow. But I think that's a hard part today.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like social media has a huge impact on that as well because there's so much more available in terms of what gets put out there. And we both know it's only a snippet of what is actually going on behind the scenes. So have you guys seen like that have an impact on exactly what you said in terms of people get saying, well, I don't agree with that. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and what's hard is, we have folks boots on ground that are watching the news, right? They're on the ground. They're in, those countries that we're listening to, and we're hearing sport newscasters talking about what's going on. And these service members are there or just returned home from there, and they have a different perspective on why things are happening and when. And so I think it's hard for them sometimes to, appreciate people's differences on those topics and the subjects when they've had a different experience from being boots on ground.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that because firsthand experience is different than someone's
Yes.
opinion. Like really, really different. So, and in terms of one of the things that I want to talk about too is in terms of health. Because I know that that's something that you and I had talked about before as well, but what are some health challenges that the veterans experience, whether it's during service or after, and the people that are in your nursing homes?
I think the biggest issue we have right now is being exposed to the toxins, all over the world. So Iraq, Afghanistan, the Mideast, whether you were, or Vietnam, Agent Orange, you were exposed to different toxins. We did have burn pit exposures. You burned the human waste. You burned all types of things, and we grew up with that because that's the environment you have to destroy. Your your food and your waste and things of that nature. And so a lot of veterans are struggling now with different types of cancers and different types of, skin conditions and asthmas and things they didn't have prior to service. So they have service connected illnesses and diseases now caused by being exposed to toxic exposure. And with my Vietnam veterans coming to my nursing home, I see a lot of issues that they're having and they're struggling with. Thankfully, the VA has recognized those and we're getting them access to care and monetary benefits. And now we're starting to do that for the Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans that were exposed to toxins while they served, and probably veterans even that served in the United States for years for some of the stuff that they were exposed to. And it's the first time that the VA is recognizing that, thankfully. But it's important because, you might seem perfectly healthy right now, but in 10 years, if you develop some type of rare cancer, it's probably could have been from your service. And so we want to make sure veterans do the paperwork for the PAC Act, go in and process their claims and benefits, make sure that, you get evaluated, get everything documented in case sometime down the road you do have issues, we can take care of you.
Yeah. And I was actually reading something the other day where a really, really high amount of veterans end up experiencing things like eczema and rosacea and things like that. And I'm curious if you've seen that.
We have, and sadly, the VA hasn't really recognized that as a presumptive condition from toxic burn pit exposure or from your time. But I do believe because of the sheer number of veterans that are showing those symptoms, I think the VA will change, and I think we'll see that added to the list of presumptives so folks can get their disability rating because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything that they can do in terms of prevention of these things? Even, we obviously know that there are certain things that they can avoid being exposed to, but is there like, do you know if anything that they can even do to like prevent these things to happen or maybe mitigate some of it?
I'm not a clinical, so I can't answer that per se, but I will say that, we get evaluated before we deploy, and you will talk to a dermatologist, and you do get your screenings. And while you're in theater and while you're in country, if you notice some changes in your skins, they do have doctors and dermatologists on site so you can go to and talk to them to mitigate the problem. Sometimes it's, the heat and the equipment that you're wearing, and they might make recommendations to you. But sometimes you can't help it. The environment is what it is, and you have your equipment and you have, to wear your uniform. But, they definitely have people on site to help.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, we got to go to our first break here, but when we come back, we're going to continue to dive into this. And one of the things that I want you to really start diving into, Maureen, just kind of think about this as we're going to break, is I want to dive into the Vets for Sets. What are you doing? How did you get into that? And what is that today? Because I really want to highlight that. So, guys, please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We got more amazing information to share.
Hey there, Renegades! Are you tired of just going through the motions? Ready to break free and design the life you've always craved? Then you're in luck, because right here, right now, you're in the heart of it all. Every single week on the Lizzie Ens Show, we release a new episode where we dive deep into the hottest topics out there, from health and fitness to mindset, business, and personal growth. But here's the kicker. We're not just here to talk. We're here to make it happen. Join us weekly for discussions that are uplifting, powerful, fun, and relatable. We're all about embracing the incredible potential of our minds and bodies and learning to move with them to reclaim our vitality in every aspect of our lives. So if you're ready to join the revolution and unlock your true potential, tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Because right here, right now, you're in the perfect place to make it all happen.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're now listening to the world-renowned and internationally recognized Amish Renegade on the Lizzie Ens Show.
All right, welcome back, you guys. I was literally just reading through your whole bio again. And like when I read that 700,000 veterans number, I'm just like, wow, like that is crazy. I actually like want to like hear more about this because you do so much for veterans. And so I want to dive into that as well. And is that outside of Vets for Sets, or is that kind of like an umbrella of everything?
No, that's outside of Vets to Sets. So that's my fun full-time job, right? The Vets to Sets is a nonprofit that I co-founded. I have the best job. So when I say we take care of 700,000, that includes running my 6 nursing homes, where we have about 1,100 veterans that are residing in those homes throughout Pennsylvania. So we have 2 in Philadelphia, 1 in Scranton, Pennsylvania, 1 in Pittsburgh, 1 in Hollidaysburg, 1 in Erie. None of them are close to each other. So they're just wonderful facilities that take care of amazing veterans. And we have great staff. And then with my job as the Director of Veteran Affairs for the state of Pennsylvania, I work with the county directors. Every county has a veteran service officer. We train all of them to help them do claims and benefits for veterans when veterans walk in off the street to the county. We work with your American Legions, your VFWs. We train all of their service officers. And of course, most of the money that comes to Pennsylvania comes through other agencies, other secretaries. So Department of Health, Department of Aging, Human Services. We work closely together on all different types of initiatives: behavioral health, mental health for veterans, women's issues, homelessness, employment and education, and corrections and judicial. So it keeps us pretty busy. We work really closely. And then we have great relationships with all of the nonprofits in the community that take care of veterans, the folks that run the housing shelters and the food banks. And we work closely to make sure we know where all of those partners are so we can refer veterans to services. And, kind of just, I started my company and then we started Vets to Sets, which we're going to talk about. So when they asked me to do this position as the Director of Veteran Affairs, it made sense because I've been in this space taking care of veterans for so long.
Yeah, and there's nothing better than someone that has like walked through it yourself and you understand the system and what it's like, and you understand what these vets have gone through by serving and then coming back and integrating back into, a quote unquote normal life.
Yes.
Which by the way, like, what is that like, coming back from, let's say you were in Haiti and then coming back and integrating into what a new normal life is. Like, what was that like?
I think Haiti was easy for me because I was young and I was single, and it wasn't like, I didn't have a lot of stressors when I left. It was just me taking care of me, doing some new adventure and going to a third world country, and I was young. And it was just an eye-opening experience. So it was just for me a great learning experience. Iraq, my kids were in first and third grade. And I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and there's no military installation, right? So my kids didn't have other families and military families that they can share that experience of being away. So most of my stress was, is my husband going to be okay with the kids? Are my kids going to be okay? How am I going to talk to them? Do their teachers understand that their mom's in a war zone? And, if they're having a bad day, it's not just because they didn't sleep last night. There could be other stressors where military installations, that community understands that environment. So for me, that was hard. And I think, that's similar for most folks that are in the reserve component that leave. And, you have civilian jobs and then you're deployed and you come back. So you didn't have a community of care. Your family's pretty much left alone. So you take that stress with you. But when you return, reintegration for me wasn't difficult because I was still full-time active duty. So I didn't have to come back and get back into a civilian mindset. But I think for many service members, especially reserve component, after you're been on active duty for a year or 2 years, and now you've come back and you're a civilian, it's just that readjusting and your family to readjust to you, right? Everybody's back home. And that's always a challenge for folks. But for many people leaving the service, it's just, they had that purpose and passion again. And so where do you find that in the civilian world, right? Finding a job and a good salary is great, but does it give you that same sense of purpose and belonging to that family of fellow service members that, you went into a war zone with and, stood shoulder to shoulder with? When you go to the office, it doesn't have that kind of feel. And I think some folks really struggle to find their next mission in life and their purpose. Some folks do really great when they leave. They get great jobs. I mean, there's many Fortune 100 and 500 CEOs that are thriving because they were super smart and they have that world experience and they understand different operating environments, and that translates really well into being a good CEO. Yeah. But some people struggle with that transition. I think most of it's really trying to find what they want to do and how they can, find that purpose again.
Do you feel like, or do you think that some of that has to do with, what they may have also experienced while they were on duty, if they're struggling with like PTSD and stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think of the folks that were military sexual trauma victims, right? I mean, they're reliving that experience and coming home. And, frankly, there weren't a lot of programs available, especially for women, because women veterans only make up 20% of the armed services now. So the VA healthcare system didn't have a lot of access to care for female veterans. And you'd have to go to a VA hospital and walk down a lobby full of men to get to a counselor for military sexual trauma. Like, how would that, you're taking a rape victim potentially and making them walk through a bunch of, very uncomfortable environments. So, the VA had to recognize that, and they have, and they've stepped up to say, some people had some traumatic experience when they served. When I was a second lieutenant, I had a roommate that was shot and killed right outside my first room at a military base. And I would never have thought that a military base would be a location where I should be afraid, or, that you should be afraid to serve, that you're at risk hanging out with so many men. It never dawned on me because maybe I grew up with brothers, so I never saw the threat. But that was eye-opening to think that, things like that happen, and that many women were nervous and afraid to serve in the military, or many LGBTQ civilians, afraid to come into this environment thinking that they would be, risking, different treatment. And, that shouldn't be the case. It's changed now, but it took us years to get to here.
Yeah. Were you a huge part of making sure that those things got changed for women?
So, the nice thing is I had a voice as I moved up in rank. When I was with National Guard Bureau, I did run the family programs and the sexual assault programs for the Army National Guard. So we worked with the Department of the Army and Department of the Air Force and these other services on improving the processes. I think in 2011, there was an Invisible War documentary really showcasing and highlighting the issues with sexual assault and sexual trauma in the military sexual trauma. The fact that many cases were never adjudicated or even, prosecuted. And so that shed a lot of light on the programs and, the failure of our programs to really prevent that type of an environment. So, it took legislative action and it took, changes in our, Uniform Code of Military Justice system and process to remove commanders from having all the authority to put it in the hands of lawyers and prosecutors to charge those cases as criminal. And because of that, the pendulum definitely has swung. And people now understand that you can't do that and get away with it.
It's very, very interesting to just listen to you talk about this, because I'm thinking about, from my background and like where I come from, sexual assaults and sexual trauma and all that stuff happens in the Amish community too. And they kind of just keep it under wraps. Like, it's like, hey, the leaders of the church are like, yay, they may know, and they have their own way of like, quote unquote, punishing people, but the law doesn't get involved. Now, there have been a few women specifically that have left the Amish community, and they have done some very hard work to get the people that are abusers or have been abusers in the Amish community. And they actually ended up in jail because they got them where they needed to. And I think that that's so important. But the reason that I think that that's so important too is because it's very easy in a tight knit, like whether it's religious or something like the military where it's governed under, a few people, it's very easy to not recognize any of those things that are going on. So
yeah, I look back at my career and I remember when I was at basic training, and you had a drill sergeant, they took some of the women into their office to counsel and talk, and they were in there for a while, and it never dawned on me, and naive, I guess, at the time. But when I went to, I went back to college, folks wrote me and they're like, oh, do you remember so-and-so? She's like pregnant now and had to be kicked out of the military because, at the time, if you were pregnant, you couldn't really stay in. It wasn't, you didn't get to have an opportunity. Wow. And here's a woman who joined to better her life. And, you could call it consensual if you wanted to, but he was an E7 and she's a private, at basic training in a training environment. It wasn't really consensual. And, looking back at that, the military knew that was happening at times, and their peers did. And that went under the radar for a long time. But, you look at 1980s with tailhook. You hear those situations. It took us, to 2011 to really fix the problems with that and to, really address the issues that commanders should not be able to say, oh, it's a he said, she said, and, you were drunk, so that's disorderly conduct. You're leaving the military, and I'm going to promote this male officer. So they've really changed the policies, procedures. And I think today women can do anything in the armed services, and I would encourage them to do it because they could do any job and they'll be the commander. So it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we got to go to our next break here, but when we come back, we are going to dive into Vets for Sets. We kind of like, this was awesome. And thank you for sharing all that. It's just so amazing. And I think what I really want you guys to, whoever's listening, like really think about these things, because you have done such amazing work to pave the way to even make it better and easier for women to serve, but also what you're doing now post care too. So I'm very excited. We're going to go to our next break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about Vets for Sets. So we'll be right back, guys.
Hey there, Renegades. Are you tired of just going through the motions? Ready to break free and design the life you've always craved? Then you're in luck, because right here, right now, you're in the heart of it all. Every single week on the Lizzie Ens Show, we release a new episode where we dive deep into the hottest topics out there, from health and fitness to mindset, business, and personal growth. But here's the kicker. We're not just here to talk. We're here to make it happen. Join us weekly for discussions that are uplifting, powerful, fun, and relatable. We're all about embracing the incredible potential of our minds and bodies and learning to move with them to reclaim our vitality. in every aspect of our lives. So if you're ready to join the revolution and unlock your true potential, tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Because right here, right now, you're in the perfect place to make it all happen.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
You're now listening to the world-renowned and internationally recognized Amish Renegade on the Lizzie Ens Show.
All right, you guys, we are going to talk about Vets for Sets. So who is Vets for Sets? Please tell us what it is, because I know it's something really phenomenal. So
it is really fun. You know, a few years ago when I was starting my own business, I received a phone call from a dear friend, and he said, there's these two movie production producers, commercial production, and they have a really great idea and they want to vet it by you. So they asked me if I would help them start Vets to Set. And the concept was that we would put 2 veterans on every commercial production set when they were, making commercials, that the producers would have 2 veterans serving as production assistants. They're normally union jobs, but producers always need folks to run errands and do little odds and end jobs. But it's really hard to get your foot in the door and no producers to get you that opportunity. So these producers thought, if we could just get producers on board, create a database and a website so folks can sign up, the producers can sign up. Then when they're shooting a commercial, they can say, hey, Maureen, we're going to be shooting this commercial in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania this week, and you're in our system. Do you want to come and do it? So we did our first shoot out in LA, and it was a lot of fun. And, 2 of the veterans that were shooting and working as production assistants were both offered full-time jobs immediately. Wow. And then we went to New York and we started a cohort in a class, and, we had some folks working for 30 Rock, and, now she's working full-time for SNL. So, it's been really productive and successful. We're trying to get more veterans into Vets to Set. We're trying to ask more producers, but since the time we started in 2017, we now have movie and television producers taking part, Warner Brothers, Telemundo, so many other producers. And it's great. It's great opportunities for our veterans. We've had veterans work backstage at the Emmys and the Grammys, the trailer awards that you were at. So, it's really nice showcasing it. And it's, again, the whole intent is to get a veteran's foot in the door. Because when you leave the service, maybe you want to take your experiences and do something completely different, get into cinematography or to light and sound and effects or hair and makeup. And this just offers you that opportunity to explore and see how a production site works. And I'll tell you, when I went out to LA and watched the first site, I didn't feel awkward at all. It was like a military environment. You set up in one area, you put everything in place, everyone's there, and then like within an hour, you're tearing it all down. You're driving 3 hours to another location, and at the end, you end up with a 30-second commercial. But you went to 3 different locations, like over maybe 60 miles, 70 miles. But it was so interesting how quick they just set up, tear down, and move. It's just like a military environment. So I thought, this is just perfect for veterans. They would love this. And so far, everybody has. And the 2 producers have been out. David Cohen was with you out in LA, and Peter Friedman didn't join him. But it's a great team. And, David, this was his passion. He's the president and the founder, and Peter and I were co-founders. And it's just been so much fun. And I mean, I've had phone calls like, Maureen, we're doing a commercial here in LA. Can you find us someone, or in Nevada? And if I can't find someone immediately that's in the system, the nice thing with my experience in my past is I can call folks from the National Guard and the Reserve component and find, a service member who might be in that area that's willing to learn about the industry. And we've not had a problem filling positions. So the veterans just love the opportunity. And, it could just be, extra money on a weekend, and you've got to see if this is something you're interested in.
Yeah, and what a great way to have. Now, are they able to like just go somewhere and be like, "Hey, I want to sign up for this," and put their name in, or what's that process?
Yes. So you go to vetstoset.org, our website, and you say you're a veteran. There'll be a link. I'm a veteran. You click on it. It'll ask you for your name, your information, and then ask you to show a document that shows you were a military veteran. And then that comes to me, and I'll verify their service. And then a producer might be looking, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, looking for veterans in VetraSet." They'll type in a zip code, and it'll pull up anyone that wants to be in that location to be considered, and they'll call them on their own and say, "Hey, Liz, do you want to be on our, we're going to do this commercial this weekend, or we're going to do this movie for the next 6 months. Are you willing to do it? How often?" And you can say yes and sign up, and then they pay you directly. So that's to
Wow.
set has nothing to do with that. They hire you, they go ahead and you work for them, and hopefully it's a good match and the producers like you. And so many successful careers started as being production assistants. I mean, David Cohen and Peter Friedman both told me that they started as production assistants and then worked their way up to be producers. So it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. What a great way to have that kind of segue too, especially if it's someone that feels like that's what they always wanted to do.
Right.
But I'm it's really interesting just hearing you talk about this, and you're talking about how it felt like you were in the military when they were shooting, and you feel like the experience that veterans get when they're in duty or on duty and they come back and then they go to something like that, their experience is actually helping them in
Yes,
this
their
process.
experience and their whole military values, right? So you arrive, you might be asked to do something you weren't intending to do, but you're a team player. They need you to
Mm.
do a mission. So you're like, sure, I'll be the one that drives and picks up the actors or the actresses, or sure, I'll work over here and just help you load all this equipment up. And veterans are used to doing that. You just chip in whatever way you can to get the mission accomplished. And they do it really well with a lot of energy, and they're on time and they're punctual and they're disciplined.
Mhm.
And I think those values, resonate with the producers. And it's a
Yeah.
fast pace. They need a lot of stuff to happen in a very short time. And it's organized chaos, kind of like a war zone. So there's
Mhm.
so many things happening at once. And so they need people who can understand that, not be intimidated by action, and be able to just dive in and do the work.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. How incredible is that? Now, one of the things that kind of like piqued my interest when we were talking earlier is in terms of homelessness. Is this something that you guys see a lot when vets come back?
Sadly, right now, there are a lot of veterans struggling with homelessness. So if you ask me for the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, and we have 700,000 veterans, if you ask me how many veterans are homeless, I would probably say our point in time count that we do every January would tell me close to 1,000 veterans.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't sound like a large number, but those are veterans that we know are living on the streets or in and out of specific transition housing that we put them in to get help.
Mhm.
That does not count folks that have housing insecurity, that are facing foreclosures, that are struggling with finding affordable housing. And unfortunately, Philadelphia and some cities, it's more expensive than other areas. And we see single moms struggling. We see young veterans who thought when they left the service, they'll come back home and find a job easily. They'll be making what they made. And they forget that, you don't have that community of an installation. You might not have the same salary you had, and all the extra additional benefits that you receive, your health care and your housing allowance, that you took for granted, and now that you didn't budget for that.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, some veterans do struggle. Some veterans find themselves in and out of jobs, and so they end up having problems. But older veterans or Vietnam era veterans, they're still struggling. They've been
Mhm.
ignored and they were not taken care of. And I think they're the ones that you see, the older veterans on the street, that are struggling. But there are enough programs for veterans. They're just not always in the right community, right? So if you're in Philadelphia, I might be able to offer you housing in Harrisburg, but do you really want to leave Philadelphia if that's where you grew up and what you know? And I think some folks, that they struggle with that. There are resources, it's just not always the right fit for the person that's struggling.
Mm. That's so interesting. I have a question. So this is 700,000 veterans just in Pennsylvania alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there other states that have the same type of programs in place that you guys do?
Yes, thank you for asking me that. I would have forgotten to mention that. Yes, every state has a state director of veteran affairs, like myself. In some states, they're a cabinet secretary. In Pennsylvania, I work for the Adjutant General, but doesn't matter the structure. Every state has a state director. Almost every county has a veteran affairs office. We work really closely with the federal VA. The federal VA runs your veteran hospitals, your VA hospitals, your clinics. And they also adjudicate and pay your service-connected disabilities and your ratings. But the states work with the veteran service officers that process your claims. They'll have the real estate, your state benefits, and they know where all the programs are and the resources available to you in every zip code. So if you ask me where the closest homeless shelter is from where I'm living right now, I could tell you that. And people should just know we have connections to all the employers too. So there's so many folks that are thriving and employers that want to hire veterans, and they don't always know where to find the veterans. So we work closely to help with our Department of Labor and Industry partners to help veterans find good jobs so that they don't have the problems with the cost of living.
Yeah. I'm very curious. For someone that has never been in the military and you're, a regular US citizen, what are some things that people can do to help out with these programs or anything? Like if you know.
Yeah, I think one of the things to do is if you know a veteran, just ask them if they know where their benefits are. Ask them if they know that there's a state agency that can help them. Many veterans say they're fine and they don't need anything, and many veterans are fine. But I would just encourage folks, when you find an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor that is a veteran, to let them know that there are resources available. There are so many ways you can volunteer. All of the nonprofits love volunteers. You could drop off underwear, socks, food to pantries and to shelters. That's something that they always need besides just giving them checks. Those type of, supplies are always needed. Go to the nursing homes. Every state has veteran homes. Our veterans love to have visitors, and they have the best stories. In our homes, we have 30 World War II veterans. I celebrated the birthday of a 100-year-old female Marine who was a truck driver at Camp Lejeune. We have another 100-year-old female who not only served in the Air Force in World War II, but came back and played baseball for the Georgia Peaches, League of Their Own. There's just so many cool folks in our nursing homes. I celebrated a 104th birthday. Just the stories and, the experiences they can share. I think civilians, high school kids, choir groups, just going in and singing for them and participating in events is great, and they would never turn anybody away.
Yeah, that's so amazing. It makes me want to go visit the homes because I worked in a home for like 6 years, and truthfully, it's probably one of the most rewarding jobs that I've ever had because I grew so close to a lot and I had some patients that served, and it's an honor, really truly is, to hear what they have to share, and also like they want to be able to talk about it too, to and share their stories too. So
it's funny, some of the families will say, I never heard my grandfather tell that story, or I never heard my father. But when they come to the homes, the majority of our veterans are males. And they have that common stories. They share their war stories, and those are common experience. So they tend to thrive amongst each other.
Yeah.
They tend to bond again, just like they did in military service, and they perk up. And because they're surrounded by other veterans, they share more stories than they ever have, the men and women. And it's so much fun to see, and it's definitely therapeutic for them. But our staff love the stories. It's so much fun. We have great support in the communities too.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love hearing that. And it's almost I'm thinking of it being like this whole building of like a therapy session for everybody, because they know it's a safe place, and the person they're talking to understands like what they're talking about, and they don't feel like there's anything wrong. Like it's a coping mechanism for them. It's therapy for them. I love that. That's so amazing. Well, We have to go to our last break here, and then we're going to have our last few minutes. And I want you to think about what it is that you want to share. Like where can people find you? What do you want to share? And what do you want to leave our listeners with when we come back? So don't go anywhere, you guys. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Renegades! Are you tired of just going through the motions? Ready to break free and design the life you've always craved? Then you're in luck, because right here, right now, you're in the heart of it all. Every single week on the Lizzie Ens Show, we release a new episode where we dive deep into the hottest topics out there, from health and fitness to mindset, business, and personal growth. But here's the kicker. We're not just here to talk. We're here to make it happen. Join us weekly for discussions that are uplifting, powerful, fun, and relatable. We're all about embracing the incredible potential of our minds and bodies and learning to move with them to reclaim our vitality in every aspect of our lives. So if you're ready to join the revolution and unlock your true potential, tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Because right here, right now, you're in the perfect place to make it all happen. You're now listening to the world-renowned and internationally recognized Amish Renegade on the Lizzie Ens Show.
All right, you guys, we just have a few minutes left here. Maureen, I want you to share with the audience, like, where can they find you, or websites that would be ideal for anybody to go visit if they're interested in anything? And then what are some things that you want to leave our listeners with?
Thank you. I love that. For any veteran out there, anyone trying to take care of a veteran, I would go to the federal VA website first, but then also go to your state. Pennsylvania, we're the Department of Military Veteran Affairs, so we're at dmva.pa.gov. But every state government has an Office of Veteran Affairs that can help you access resources. What I would love to leave you with is, I know we talked about some tough conversations, but there's so many fun programs to teach veterans how to start their own Vets to Set nonprofits to teach you how to start your own small business. And there's so many perks to doing that. And there's so many professional certifications veterans can take from Syracuse University, the Institute for Military Veteran Families, that are free for spouses and veterans to help you thrive in your next career. I think the military service has done so much for all of us. I think you walk away with a sense of pride, but also an understanding of a bigger world than most people have been exposed to. And I think those experiences really resonate in corporate America and the nonprofit space. So I would just encourage everyone to use your military experience to your benefit. There's so many ways to thrive. And if you are struggling, there's a lot of help out there for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I just want to encourage anybody that is listening in here, if you or a loved one of yours, family member, has served or even is serving at the time, like, please take note of this and go to these resources and get as much help as you possibly can, because as Maureen said, there's a lot of resources available. Sometimes it's a matter of finding them and also finding the right ones. And if you don't know where else to go to the federal one that Maureen mentioned, because it sounds like that is where you start for your state. Am I correct?
That is, yes. And if you want to go to Vets to Set, we are at vets2set.org. And if you want to link in with me, I'm at Maureen Hopkins Weigl at LinkedIn. I will definitely connect you to any resources within your state, or any of the nonprofits and the other programs I mentioned. Happy to help.
Awesome. Real quick, and we have a few minutes left. I want to chat just a tiny bit about health for the veterans. What are some things that they can do when they get back in order to help them with their health?
Sure. I'm going to give you a little common one. I actually was down in Philadelphia yesterday with an organization that started a program to remind veterans to first take care of your inner self by watching what you're eating, and remember to continue your military discipline of working out. I think as we leave military service, we were used to doing physical fitness every day with a group, and it was mandatory. But I think if you can stay disciplined, that is just one way to de-stress and to help yourself and clear your mind. So there's so many ways that you can continue to work out, and I would encourage you to do that. First and foremost, I think that just is one easy way. Watch what you're eating and drinking, and watch the workouts. I think just put that military hat back on and, you know, do what you've been taught. And I think that'll help one area. And the other I would say is, if you're having problems and you're struggling, there is a lot of help out there for you. So don't do it alone. Some people turn to alcohol and drug addiction. If you're finding yourselves on a lot of pain medicine, look for other solutions. Those are the folks that run into trouble, that end up in our corrections for multiple DUIs and drug addictions. And they didn't intend to get there. They just had a lot of pain. There's other ways to remedy the pain, and there's so many programs for you. So, you know, those are just little things of advice that I can give you.
No, I think that's amazing. And I was just thinking about this as you're sharing this about, you know, the exercise and the eating. Like, really, what I always tell people is like, those things are at our fingertips. We just have to decide that that's important for us. And really, honestly, and it's the foundation, like what we're putting into our body, how we're sleeping, how we're taking care of our body. That is always going to be the foundation. And then everything else becomes kind of like the pillars of what you're adding to it. So for example, you know, I work in the health coaching industry, and I teach people like, hey, your foundation is the food that you eat, the water you sleep, the water that you drink, your sleep, your exercise. That's always going to be your foundation, no matter where you're at in your life. You have to dial that in, and that has to be really, really important. Everything else that you do in terms of whether or not you need to go see a doctor to do some lab work to see what else is going on, if you have skin conditions, if you have digestive issues going on, that is where the pillars come in, and where you dive in a little bit deeper to see how can you make it better. But the military teaches great things in terms of habits and discipline, and that can be applied so well and translate over into the rest of your life if you keep applying it. I always talk about that in terms of my Amish background. Like, the Amish actually have very Germanic habits. Like, they're very disciplined. They show up, and they kind of like how you explain, like the vets go on the sets and they're just like,
Yes.
oh yeah, sure, like I'll do it, like no big deal. Well, that's kind of how we are. We don't like complain about it. We just go do it and get it done. And really that's what it comes down to. And it builds resilience too, because you just get it done. So no, I think that's amazing. Do you have anything else that you want to share about that?
No, you know, I think resiliency is something that the military's focused on the past few years. You know, meditation, yoga are new things, but the health and fitness is critically important. And they taught you that discipline, continue it, because it'll help you throughout. And I will tell you, my World War II veterans at the homes, because they've lived that type of a lifestyle, they're thriving. It's my Vietnam era veterans that were exposed to toxins and that didn't practice that discipline or couldn't, that are struggling. So you definitely see that giving that portion of your life up and not paying attention to your food and your sleep and your health and your physical stamina definitely has long-term impacts on you.
Yeah. And well, and also the other thing too is like we talked about this briefly, is the food in the MREs and how that has changed.
Yes.
And I personally, just from a health perspective, I'm like, okay, I think it could even get better. But
Right.
they've made improvements, so that's good. But with that being said, it still helps. Like you mentioned like the toxins they get exposed to. Yeah, that does affect you physically, mentally, emotionally. And so there's things in place, and there's protocols that can be taken in order to get rid of those toxins as well. But no, I think that's absolutely phenomenal. And I think that there's a lot that we can still do to continue to improve everything for them. And you're already doing it. So,
well, thank you. And the last thing I'd say is get involved, volunteer your time. I think it's therapeutic and it's rewarding to give back to fellow veterans. And I think it helps as much as it helps the veteran in need. So definitely stay involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Maureen, today has been just absolutely phenomenal. Honestly, I can't wait to meet you in person. So,
Same.
hopefully I'll make it to Pennsylvania here. I have like a lot of people. I'm not kidding. It's probably the algorithm, but every single week I speak to multiple new people from Pennsylvania. It's crazy. It's probably stuff. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. It was such an honor, and I'm excited to continue this relationship and conversation. And thanks, guys. We'll be back next week for another episode.
This show is made possible with your support. Tune in to The Lizzie Ens Show every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific Time, and around the world at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. And don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends.